Hello, welcome to this video in which we will look further at the iOcean X7 Elite for a quick rundown review. Right in front of me, obviously you can tell that I've got the iOcean X7 Elite in front of me. So let's take a look around the device real quick, just run through. So up the front, we've got the 5 megapixel camera. We've got the earpiece for making phone calls. We've got the screen, which is a 5.0 IPS panel of resolution 1920 by 1080 pixels. We've got the capacitive buttons down the bottom, and they're non-backlit, so they don't light up. For example, you can tell they don't light up at all. They're just kind of painted on there. And yeah, overall, it's got a pretty nice design. I kind of like the look of the white on the black, and I think it kind of gives it a really nice semi-duotone classy look, and I'm kind of fond of it. So let's take a look at the other sides then. On the right, you have the power button. On the top, we have the 3.5mm jack for headphones, earphones, and whatever else you might want to plug in there. Like an amplifier if you wish. On the left, we've got the volume rocker. On the bottom, we have the micro USB port together with the microphone for voice calls. And up the back, it's probably where you get it's most busy. You've got the branding, iOcean. Bit of a text here, it says FHD with the 13 megapixel camera. The LED flash. And you've got the speaker grill right here. Now, overall, build quality of the device it's okay. To be honest, the phone's pretty much alright. The one problem I have with this phone is this specific back cover right here. I feel it's a bit flimsy, and it's kind of made a bit cheaply, which makes me a little bit sad. Let me just pop this back on. And what I mean by that is, you can take a look as I pop this back on. I feel that it's not really that sturdy as it pops back on, and it's a bit difficult to pop back on. But if you notice really closely, there are these little gaps of black that seem to appear even though you close the lid tightly, and it's a little bit of an eyesore. But if you don't change your battery that often, or if you use an external case, I guess it's not that big of a deal, Also, well, I'm not a particular fan of using whatever it is. It just looks like it's a sprayed on metallic on the plastic buttons. I fear obviously that these will chip over time, and you probably get like this really ugly white plastic or black plastic. But I could be wrong. So let me just power off the device, and we'll take a look at the device from scratch, shall we? Just take off screen and clean off the screen a little bit before we get into it. Alright, so when you power on the device for the first time, it may take a while. It vibrates, and you're greeted with the iOcean X7 Elite sort of logo, which is supposed to come up. Give me a sec. I think it just shut itself down. There we go. iOcean X7. And you have a boot animation, which is kind of reminiscent of Samsung branding, but I gotta say that logo doesn't look too bad, and it doesn't have an annoying boot sound, which kind of ticks me off a little bit. At least it's not apparent here, and I can always appreciate that. You can tell that the device starts up quite fast, despite it being a cold start. So let's take a look at the UI of the device. If you notice, the UI is kind of similar to stock AOSP, but there will be some differences which you probably notice, in which obviously it's 2 SIMs. So if you head up into settings, let's tap that. You've got things like SIM management, and heading into About Phone, obviously you can tell it runs Android 4.2.1. Just tapping that could bring me to developer options. Oh, further developer options. Okay, I didn't know this existed. I just hit something extra. That's interesting. Anyway, as far as the UI and design goes, it's pretty much stock Android, though windows and animations and transitions are pretty much turned off for the most part. So as you can tell, if I hit that, it just jumps straight into it. Heading into developer options here, I get a very, very limited set of developer options. But as I've accidentally discovered just now, tapping this brings me into a full developer options. Ta-da! Okay, that's something I didn't know as well. You learn something new every day. So yeah. But in terms of UI and navigation, things are relatively quick and snappy, so there's not much to complain about. I did accidentally tap something there. It happens. We just got back to home screen. And yeah, it's generally quite an easy to use device. And the screen looks great as well. Preloaded software, you get things like, well, you get Google Play Store for starters. A lot of this, well, not a lot of it, was installed by myself, obviously, such as 3D Mark, Android Tuner, Into the Benchmark, things like that. But the things you get stuck with the phone includes, you know, browser, calculator, clock, download manager, you know, your email app, your contacts list, which I've accidentally tapped in again. It seems to happen when you're holding in such an awkward position. And yeah, one thing which I find quite interesting is that I did not install Super User on this device, if you notice. Let me just turn off the brightness. Give me a sec. Just tap that. Ah! God damn it. Tap auto. Down there. No. Screw off. Okay, that's better. Hopefully you can see it better on the video now. Now, I did not install or root this device and get Super User on there. This device came pre-rooted and installed with Super User, and everything was in English when I booted it up. So you're probably not gonna, you know, waste a lot of time if you're into that sort of custom ROM rooting sort of device thing. Well, that's good news for you because the device comes pre-rooted. Now let's take a look at some specifications and see if they line up with what iOcean is advertising it for. Let's pump up into the benchmark, and let's hit into device info. Now, taking a look at device info, we can tell, obviously, it lines up, iOcean X7, iOS 4.2.1. Now, CPU model, it states here as a MTK MT6589, but this is actually a 6589T, as you can tell in CPU, where the frequency goes up to 1.508, because T obviously stands for Turbo Edition, which is slightly overclocked over the standard, I think it was 1.2. You've got a screen resolution of 1920 by 1080 pixels, a 12.6 megapixel camera. You've got your memory, which goes up to 32 gigs of storage, but a little bit of it is taken up by the system, so you're left with 27 gigs to play with, which is still plenty. 4 cores. You've got the PowerVia SGX 544 by Imagination Technologies. You've got your... yeah, that's pretty much it as far as things go. So let's take a look at some benchmarks. Now, unlike my previous videos, I'm not going to run these benchmarks on the fly because I've already run them. So you can tell that my benchmark score is 1540, well, 15540, and that's a pretty good score considering I did this test on a Zoppo ZP980 before, and I only got about, I think it was 13,000. So this scored relatively well, as you can tell if you need to take a look at the scoring. And it's a pretty good score. It's very, very respectable. So let's take a look at other benchmarks which I've ran before this. And one of them would be 3D Mark. If I can find the button. There we go. 3D Mark. Now 3D Mark, this again is something interesting because when I ran 3D Mark on the Zoppo ZP980, upon finishing the benchmark, the program would crash. So 3D Mark actually crashed. So what happened is that I think 3D Mark updated itself. Now when I ran it, it did not kill itself, and that is always good news. So you can tell my scoring for the first one is 3,700. You know, with Ice Storm Extreme, it dropped down to about 1,865, and with Unlimited, it went to 2,871. Now, performance-wise, probably the most important thing you should take note is that FPS weights would generally be pretty dismal in Extreme. So I would say that Ice Storm Standard is a pretty good indication of performance, and it got about 15 FPS on average. And I think when I saw it running, it went about 20 FPS on highest value, and that's a pretty good thing, given that I think, in my opinion at least, Ice Storm sort of imitates running really, really high-end games. And yeah, to be able to run that, given the fact that it's a single-core GPU, it's pretty good. Now let's take a look at Epic Citadel, which I will run on the fly for you guys. Epic games. Skip, skip, skip. Skip. No, I didn't skip. Okay, sorry for the cut, but Epic Citadel wasn't particularly behaving, so I decided to wipe application data and run it again. So right here, as you can tell, you've got Epic Citadel running in front of me, and frame rates are pretty good, as you can tell. There's no particular problem with it, no stuttering, no lagging, and it generally looks beautiful. Let's run the benchmark, and you can tell that this is running at about 51 frames per second at tops. Bear in mind that there is a frame rate cap, as far as I know of, for Epic Citadel, in which it sort of runs at a stagnant 51 frames per second at tops. I'm not too sure why, but it does anyway. Even on my Galaxy Note 3, so you know, it's a common problem. But as you can tell, FPS quality is perfectly smooth. It's brilliant. So for majority of games, if you run like Dead Trigger, Temple Run, you're probably not gonna run into any problems running them. Let alone if you're gonna run like, you know, 2D games, it's going to run fine. So let's just let it finish its benchmark. As you can tell, it handles each scene relatively well, minus for a bit of FPS dips here and there. And to be honest, anything above 30 FPS in this case is generally really, really good. But yeah, it handles the details pretty well. Benchmarking. Yeah. Pretty smooth, yes. There we go. So as you can tell, it's running at a full resolution of 1920 by 1080. Okay, not a scaled down resolution of 1280 by 720, and it's pulling about 44.8 FPS, which is pretty damn good, running at the high performance settings. If you run it at high quality settings, then if I remember, it dips down to about I think it was 41 FPS. But in general, performance is still pretty damn good for this device. So let me just run this through you back now that we're back on the home screen. The UI. Okay, I'll come back to UI again because of this. Take a look at this bottom left corner. What does that button look like to you? To me, it looks like the multitasking window button, which pressing it comes up with the options context menu. It's kind of strange, but I mean, it's not exactly game breaking. It doesn't destroy your user experience with the phone, but it's kind of just one of those things you take notice of. Like pressing it instead brings up the context menu, and this happens to every application as well, where it's supposed to bring up something like, you know, this, where it brings up a list of applications. So, I mean, it's not groundbreaking, but that's that. Another thing you should note is running this is all stock, alright? So I ran Google Music, and it crashes. or not Google Music, but the music application which comes with the phone, and it crashes. I'm not too sure why that is. I've tried wiping the data, but it still does not fix it. But I mean, it's not very difficult for you to get a proper music player from the Play Store anyway, and I got one myself, which is, well, Play Music. And you can tell right here, I've got Armin's Intense, the more intense edition. Good album, by the way. Get it. Oops. And yeah, music plays fine. It plays perfect. Let's get into the camera right now. As I said, you've got a 13 megapixel shooter. But I've actually ran through this whole entire thing before, and there is something I need to say about this. Now, first off, I'll start with how I really like the user interface for the camera. It's sort of similar to something you'd find on the newer HTC devices, I think starting from the HTC One X, where you have both the shutter capture and the video recording button on the same page, so you don't have to keep switching modes in order to take a photo. And I find that pretty good, and taking photos is pretty fast as well. Now, one thing I've had problems with this is focus. I find that even with focusing the camera, I don't get the quality or the sharpness which I'm supposed to be getting. And this could be because it's free, taken with free hand, but I've tried taking photos outdoors as well, and I find myself in a sort of similar position with that. Now, obviously, the good thing with having a video record button on the same screen is that you can record videos really quickly, and you can take photos at the same time. Sorry about the cutoff, but my video recording just gave up on me halfway, and my video got cut off. So as I was saying, when you're taking videos, you can take photos at the same time, but you should bear in mind and notice, that the the photos that are taken are of only 2 megapixels, as you can tell, out of photos which I took just now. Another thing that, and this is what I was getting at, which I find to be very, very important, is that if I hit settings, you notice that I do not have an option to shoot at 13 megapixels. I can confirm that this is a pure software issue, and I will demonstrate this later when I open up another application, another camera application, which I got off the internet. But for now, let's leave that and let's hit on to the video recorder. So if you can see, video quality, I don't get anything really specific. It's really ambiguous. I get settings like low, medium, high, and fine. Now, through experimenting, I can tell you that fine records at about 1920 by 1080 pixels. High records at about 1280 by 720, and medium records at about 640 by 480, and low does it like 100 by something, really, really, really low. As far as photo quality goes, I would have to say that using this default camera app, photo quality is not too bad. It is a bit washed out, some of the colors, but noise control is pretty good. It's pretty annoying though, how I don't get to shoot at the full 13 megapixels. But I will show you now. I will fire up Focal. And Focal actually used to be part of CyanogenMod. However, they sort of went their own way and went solo and released their application onto Play Store as a beta standalone. And as I said, it's beta, but it does allow me to shoot at the full 12.6 megapixels, and I've confirmed that this does work. So it is a pure software issue in regards to the default camera app, where it does not like to shoot at 13 megapixels. However, for some people thinking, let's just migrate fully to Focal. Focal in itself, as I said, is pure beta. So watch, if I switch to the video application, it crashes. So you sort of have to live with the fact that if you want to take videos, you got to use the default camera app. But if you want to really take advantage of that 13 megapixel camera, you'd probably have to use Focal or wait for, I don't know, iOcean to release a software update on that. So what else do we have to go through? Wi-Fi signal strength. Okay, let me just pull this up. Let's head on to Android Tuner, and let's go into Network Manager. Now in Network Manager, you can tell that my network connection signal strength is about negative 55, 54 decibels. And here I have my Galaxy Note 3, and it pulls at about negative 47, bearing in mind that obviously the bigger the number the better, so obviously negative 54 is better than negative 57. Alright, now they're about the same, so you're gonna get pretty good Wi-Fi signal overall, so that's not much things to complain about. As far as signal strength goes as well, comparing it with my Note 3, you will get pretty good signal strength, sort of similar to what you get, with bigger name mobile phones. Now where it all starts to fall apart, in my opinion, is with the GPS. Now I've tried many things to get this to work, but I just could not for the life of me get it to work. Excuse me. GPS never ever got a lock on for me. The most I've got it to do was C13 satellites, but it refused to connect to any of them, and I've tried using, mobile uncle tools for MTK to try and, reconfigure the whole entire thing. I tried replacing the GPS config file. I tried rebooting here and there, trying little things and pieces, but I never ever got it to work. So if you're planning to get a device, for navigation and things like that, I can't really recommend this device. It does relatively well and everything else, but do not use it as a GPS device. I'm guessing that's pretty much it as far as the device goes. And so yeah, to put my final words out there, right now this phone is selling on Geek Buying for about $279.99 American dollars, US dollars, and yep, you can get it at Geek Buying. And yeah, for a link for that, you can probably find it in my review, which I will put in the description later. So yeah, for a more in-depth review and rundown of the device, visit my website in the link down below in the description, where you'll find a link to purchase it, as well as a $15 off coupon courtesy of Geek Buying. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review, and have a nice day. Cheers.